Well, hi everybody. Welcome to this session of Fashion Revolution Week. We have with us a very exciting group of speakers who are going to be discussing one of our projects, which was incubated during Crafting Connections. That was a collaboration that we had done, Fashion Revolution India and British Council India, along with the Indian Institute of Crafts and Design, Jaipur. This project that we did was basically trying to create some kind of a manifesto that would guide people when they go in to start working with craftspeople to produce their garments or their accessories or any other products. We got we had the opportunity of getting the IICD faculty in with some of the FR team members, Shruti and Bhavya, who are with us today, and they conducted a workshop which led to the creation of this manifesto. What we've done now is we've turned to certain guests in the community, our friends who have been with us over the last few months, collaborating with us in different ways on figuring out how the craft sector can be made more robust, especially since, unfortunately, India has just gone into another lockdown. Parts of India have gone back into lockdown, and we're more or less where we were 1 year ago, unexpectedly. So we decided we would speak to people who are out there in the field working and take some more inputs and get a sense as to where we are with creating such a manifesto and feasibly making it something that people will actually adhere by. So I would like to start by asking our panelists to please introduce themselves. I'd like to start by asking Dr. Taliga Gupta, please, to tell us a little bit about her work and how she's with us today.
Thank you, Alia. As you're aware, I'm based here in Jaipur, and I'm the director of the Indian Institute of Crafts and Design. Here, the focus is definitely on design, but it is related to working with Indian handicrafts, whether it is wood, metal, stone, textile. Of course, fashion is a lifestyle issue and contains everything. Though when we talk about fashion design, we are particularly talking about apparel, but usually, but it does entail, a lot of other things. And so, yes, we deal with multiple material, we deal with multiple artisans, craftspeople. We focus on design and try and, work around solutions where our raw materials could be, products which can be upcycled. And that is largely our focus here.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Meeraji, would you please be the next person to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Alia. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. So I think all I know to do and all I've done in my life is just to work with artisans. So I don't know whether I was born with it, whether it was there in my blood, but that's what I know. I've kind of cut my teeth in Kutch, where I was part of this organization, Khamir, very much in its formative stage. I took it to a point where it developed a few very interesting programs, including the Kala Cotton program that now everybody speaks of, especially in the design world. Since 2016, I've been consulting with various companies and organizations in the creative sector. And since last year, I've been part of this very enriching movement called Creative Dignity, where a lot of us came together to just help and support artisans through the COVID crisis.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask Karishma Shani to please introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hi, Alia. Thank you for having me here. I mean, I'm really excited to be a part of such an exciting panel. My name's Karishma, and I have a label called Kasha. We work a lot within the space of craft and Indian textiles in general. We also do a lot of work in upcycling, and that's given rise to another label called Heart to Heart. I think predominantly my work kind of spans over the industry and various ways that we can really be involved in it. I do a lot of work in education too. I do work with, building skills for women to have more livelihood opportunities. So I think that if I had to say it, like I do a lot of different things within this space, but all of them are simply to see how we can use design to really make a change, and a change in a very positive and impactful way. So yeah.
Thank you so much. Over to Gina.
Hi, Alia. Thank you so much for inviting me to this very exciting panel and this very interesting discussion. So I'm Gina Joseph, and I've been running my brand Zula India for the past 6 years, and we primarily work with Indian crafts across India and bring it into jewelry design. And this is done by conducting design workshops across India, and we've worked with about 10 crafts across 8 states of India so far, and it's been a very exciting journey.
Thank you so much. I'm going to ask Raphael to please introduce himself.
Thanks, Alia. I think it's amazing. It's Fashion Revolution Week again. Happy to be here. And I'm the managing partner of Tin Nuts, which is a boutique intellectual property and business affairs firm where we work with creators across the creative industries. My work pertains to the intersection of law and business relating to media and entertainment, arts and culture, sports and technology, and I work with artists across music, film, performing arts, visual arts, and literary arts, and of course the applied arts.
Thank you so much. Bhavya, why don't you go?
So I am a graduate of IICD, and I also run a design practice where we basically upcycle waste, and in the process of upcycling, utilize crafts and knowledge indigenous to India. Our main aim is to take income opportunities to villages, because there lies a lot of knowledge, and there lies a lot of skills, but just the sensitivity towards design and quality is what we are trying to build. I am also been recently appointed regional coordinator for Jaipur by Fashion Revolution, which is a very exciting role and enables me to have such conversations. So really excited to be on this panel. Thank you so much.
Most welcome. Thank you. Shruti Singh, your turn.
Thanks, Alia. Hi, everyone. I'm Shruti Singh. I'm the head of policy for Fashion Revolution India, and really excited to be having this conversation because, as you know, Fashion Revolution really promotes fair and equitable systems and fosters greater transparency in the fashion industry. And to have this conversation with crafts in India and how we could create a nice collaborative system. So it's very nice to be part of this panel. Thank you so much.
Great. So now we're going to move into discussing this manifesto, which has been shared with all our panelists. And I'm going to ask the folks responsible for creating this manifesto, which is Dr. Gupta, Shruti Singh, and Bhavya Goenka, to please first start and tell us a little bit, about how it came about. Bhavya is the one who had introduced us to the idea of doing this. So I wondered if first Taliga ma'am, Bhavya, if you could start by talking about where you first heard about it, and then Taliga ma'am, if you could just take us through how this philosophy is at IICD.
Right. So actually, while at IICD in our third year, we had a very interesting workshop with a professor. His name is Mr. Binil Mohan. And what he basically asked us to do was to gather ourselves in groups of 5 people and talk to artisans, talk to young designers, talk to people who have worked with artisans for a lot of time, and try and figure out what can be a manifesto or a series of protocols, basically, for anybody who is engaging with artisans on any level. And because a lot of times there are IPR issues that artisans face or designers face, there's a lack of respect within the system, and there's a general lack of knowledge of how do we approach certain communities or certain systems, because there is no articulation around it right now. So that is something we did way back at IICD in third year, and that is something that has stuck out to me because it really built in that what is an ethical way to work with someone. And really what I learned from it is that you treat the people the way you want to be treated at the end of the day. So when I had the opportunity to pitch anything to Fashion Revolution as a part of Fashion Revolution, the first thing I spoke about was this with Alia. And I'm so happy that it has culminated into this now with Shruti, with Alia, with IICD and British Council. So yeah, that's where basically the idea came from.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Alia, and thanks, Bhavya. And first of all, I would like to say that the credit for creating this manifesto entirely is with Shruti and Bhavya. I am just a supporting person here. A support in the sense that yes, we are an institute, we work around this, there are faculty, and as Bhavya said, people interact and come out with these things. And people like Meera ji and the other panelists that we have here, like Karishma, Gina, Rafael, even Shruti and Bhavya, whoever interact with the artisans, they are aware that there is a certain lack of, sometimes there's a lack of trust. Sometimes if they trust you, they are not sure whether, you are going to give them their due. And the other time it's the other way around, that the designer trusts them completely and gives them work, and then they make copies of the work and send it around. So it's not just one way, it's both ways. So and having observed that, having been an academic for a long time, glad to say that Shruti was at NIFT while I was teaching there, and Bhavya at IICD while I was there. So I know these two people and their sincerity, and I know that yes, this is a kind of a question which is very, very pertinent. How do we interact? What should be the limit? What should be also expected out of us, us meaning designers and people who go to the field to work with them, which could be students, which could be anybody, designers, and also what would you expect out of the artisans? So it was like that. So this is how the best solution was, to make the stakeholders come together, to talk to each other, and then to find out solutions. And I think that is what was achieved in the last meeting, and that is how this manifesto came about. And like I said, I'm here to help to put it all together. But of course, these, as an academic, as a designer, as a participant, these are my views, which are already there now, which I've also sort of seen. I mean, I totally agree with the views there. So I would want actually that more people should read it and give their views and say that what do they think, because this is the approach which we felt was best, that people should interact. And our faculty interacted with them, students interacted with the artisans, and artisans interacted with them to come up with this. So I think it is better that rather than I comment exactly on that I would share it forward for others who were not involved in the workshop to comment on it, and that way the feedback will be a fairer feedback. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Shruti, you want to just set up for us a little bit how we conducted this and created it, the inputs, because I know you have put together the actual document.
Sure, Alia. So the idea behind having these conversations, where it came from. And we thought, what would be a nice process to ensure that it is a collaborative effort and also captures every side of the struggle and every side of the solution. So how can we crowdsource this, or how would we collaboratively build this? And we thought, and it is what you see today is also an evolving document, something we hope to keep building on and hope to keep getting more points of view and more solutions on the table. And we got a lot of stakeholders together, from artisans to designers to organizations working in this space, to legal input on it in terms of because intellectual property rights, again, time and again, turns out to be one of the issues that is raised by a lot of people. And then we said, okay, we've mapped out the challenges. So these are all the challenges that people are facing. So now together, once we are aware that these are the challenges faced by artisans, these are the challenges faced by designers, brands, organizations, now how can we make the processes solution oriented? And then everyone built recommendations on the main issues that we were facing, that we had identified. And that has, all those conversations, all those recommendations have now been compiled into this document, sort of as a ready reference for anyone who wants to say that, okay, now that I know that these are the problems, now that I know these are the possible solutions, can I apply them to my business? Can I make this part of my brand's ethos or part of the guidelines or policies that I follow as a person, whether it's an artisan organization who's engaging with designers who realizes that, okay, I do need to have a contract, and the contract, so maybe I've never thought of a contract because it's a trust-based business, but maybe I need to have a contract today. So just having that awareness of what is required, because once you have all these things listed or all these things incorporated, the value of work is and relationship becomes stronger, right? Because you're not worried about trust, you're not worried about deliveries, you're not worried about all those things that can be written on paper and the guidelines. And that, I think, builds more trust between stakeholders to be able to operate in a more transparent and a more equitable manner. So that's where it came from. And I think it would be nice to listen to everyone's feedback today and also incorporate this and make sure that we are building on it, and sharing it, and so that it becomes, so that, these are guidelines that we don't need to have written somewhere, but something ingrained within the way the industry functions.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I would just like to add to it that a lot of these things are really unsaid. People don't come out with these things. So what I thought was the best that Fashion Revolution had done, and it's commendable to think about it, that, we need these guidelines and put them together. We've been in this field. We always go out to the field, but there is nothing written very clearly that it should be like this. So everybody sort of assumes it on their own. So I think it's a brilliant discussion and a wonderful thing that Fashion Revolution has come up with. So especially, and it'll be helpful for students if I'm thinking from their point of view. We can create documents for future for their understanding with the experience of the people who've already been there and seen that. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you, all three of you. So many points, and I think just going to jump straight into our panelists. I'm going to ask Meeraji if she would respond to some of the things that we have discussed about the manifesto and its implementation on the artisans as well as the designer side.
Okay, so I did read the manifesto, but I must confess that I read it last week. So all the points are not right now in front of me, but I'm going to raise a few general observations on this. That first of all, when we use a word like manifesto, what does it actually mean? A manifesto is actually a declaration of some sort of vision or policy that all of us are signing up for. So my first question would be that in a space which is so individual driven, where the artisan units themselves there's such a diversity of practices, from a lone artisan to a big producer company, as well as designers, working at so many different levels. First of all, how do we, when we kind of look at this manifesto, I think the question to ask ourselves is that what will it actually achieve? While at the point, while when one talks of visibility, one talks of articulating the issues that designers and artisans face, I think it's a brilliant step. But pushing the envelope a little further, that where do we plan to go with this manifesto? How will it actually become the new social contract between two professionals who are working? Because what are we trying to do actually? I mean, there's a transaction. We are trying to lay the guidelines for how that transaction should happen in a satisfactory way between two people who are transacting, right? Now, both these two people who are transacting come from very different mindsets. The artisans come from a space where actually design was community held. It didn't belong to any one person. Where there is no reason for them to trust someone from a privileged background, because historically a lot of these communities have been at the receiving end, of the privileged communities. So there's a lot of distrust, not because they're artisans, but because of this whole imbalance, social imbalance, which is also historical. Nobody's in that sense. No one person is responsible for it. So there is already a skewed. It's not a. I mean, we're not talking from the same position. The designer comes from a very different position. The artisan comes from a very different position. So first of all, we need to ask ourselves this question: that this manifesto, how is it going to lay the grounds for a new understanding between these two differing mindsets, and how will it lead to a third common ground where the rules of the game are very clearly understood by both transacting parties? So that would be like my kind of first response to it. The second thing also is that is this manifesto going to combine forces with other similar charters? Because I know that Border and Fall is also coming out with a manifesto and a charter on the whole creative economy and the way the whole sort of ethics of working with the craft sector. So just a question, and whether it makes sense to sort of keep combining and joining forces so there's a larger visibility and larger impact in what we are trying to do.
No, definitely. I mean, I think that it's great that so many people are having these sort of thoughts at the same time. And yeah, it could be a zeitgeist. We are very mindful of the fact that we will be working this through several more lenses, and before we even put it out.
Yeah. So to answer Miraji,
please don't call me Miraji, Tulika. We are like on the same sort of platform.
I mean, it just feels good. So I, just out of respect. Yeah. So exactly the question that you have, your first question was was the exact question that came to my mind, and I asked these people before beginning. Because but there were one or two things which I have observed as a academic, and where I really appreciated the thought that if there is something written, it's easier to explain. So I am coming from there, because when so let's say from about the year 2005 or 6, I've been taking students to craft clusters to interact with artisans and to to make them understand that, look, do not wear outlandish clothes. They should feel like you're a part of them. Behave like this, behave like that, talk to people in a certain manner. But what I realized is I've been telling this year after year, but I haven't written it down anywhere. There are no, I mean, one could easily have done that, but we haven't done that. So then we also think that, okay, sometimes when these youngsters, now designers, come back, they also come back with their problems. So it is different sets of problems. If we can identify and create a common ground, is what I understood after these two youngsters spoke with me, which is Bhavya and Shruti, that we should do this. And that is when this is the angle that I saw, that yes, good, if there is something written, it's always easier to communicate. And in any case, when they work on common ground, they have to come to a common ground to understand each other and work. So if there is something written where, before telling the other person, uh, after something has happened and things turn sour, before that you tell them that, these are the things you're supposed to do, and you're supposed to behave, whether it's the student designers or young designers, or it is the artisans, and to build trust. Maybe that is the prime thing about the manifesto, to build trust. And so I think manifesto is a very big word. I completely agree. And before it becomes that, I think it has to go through several rounds, several people, and people of like-minded nature, and across the length and width of society. So that is what I feel. Yeah. That's
Can I push the uh, the the envelope on this discussion a bit, Alia?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. So because we're all discussing, I mean, this is a different perspective. I'd just like to share with all of you that, actually, if you go to see that in our society, and particularly the artisanal crafts or even knowledge by and large, it has always been embodied. Even the crafts are actually embodied. If you had to ask an artisan to write about their process, it would perhaps be a very difficult. They can demonstrate it, but maybe writing about it would have been. It's a far difficult thing to do. And I remember reading a very interesting analysis that actually the whole journey of us as Indians having such a low esteem because of what happened to us with colonialism and so on was with the coming in of the written word, or even in society at large for civilization. The minute the printing press came into being, it established that something that was written had a far greater value and authenticity compared to something that was spoken or understood or manifested. Okay, so that already brings in a certain power dynamic, that if something that is written holds far greater value than something that is in practice. And just to give you another example, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm just maybe digressing a little bit, but I think these are interesting things to think about. Is that Mahatma Gandhi, who is really like the boss where this whole thing is concerned, his own guru was this very famous Jain monk called Raichandraji. And Raichandraji himself was a businessman, and he used to have a lot of contracts. He did business, but with a lot of spiritual, awareness with what he was doing. And there was one contract that he had got into with a businessman, and the businessman came. They signed the contract, everything was done, and that guy came back the next day and said that we signed it, but I'm actually not very happy. I think maybe I undersold this product to you. So Raichandraji just took the contract and he tore it up in front of him. He said, if you're not happy about it, this contract means nothing. And let's do a new deal, because the sanctity of this deal is that both parties should feel very satisfied with the deal we've done. So yeah.
No, I'm very I'm very happy that we have the conversation has reached this stage, and I think that it's a perfect opportunity to turn to the young designer communities who go out into the field and get their inputs. And we have Raphael here to talk about contracts and what is really the value of these documents. Is it a fox? Is it something that equalizes, or does it create a bigger divide between communities? Is it being used as a tool of sort of manipulation and partial representation, because the artisan is not in the same value system as the designer or the buyer of the fashion. I also think that one of the things that we noticed in the last year is that the way artisan communities adopted technology so quickly and were forced to because of this lockdown. And I think that empowering the artisan communities, whether or not we liked it or not, we sort of flooded them with the digital age. They all had to learn about filters and broadcast messages and these things that sort of strange sort of marketing tools that have now become like part of everyday life. So I think that there's a lot of there's an interesting crossroads that we're at. And I'd love to hear from Karishma, Gina, Bhavya, and from Raphael. If you guys could take over the second half of this discussion, which we've set up. So, would like to go first?
I'm going to just jump in. I'm going to jump in actually. I think that what you guys have done is very interesting, because it is true that we need to have something that's a sort of like a guideline. But what really saddens me the most is just that we need to have these conversations of how people are supposed to behave with one another. It's supposed to be innate. It's supposed to be something that you're just supposed to be nice to people. You're just supposed to, I understand trust gets broken. It even happens at home, in your family, businesses that you run with people in the same value system, it's still happening all the time. So technically speaking, It saddens me to know that we've reached this place that we have to tell people, please be ethical, please be sustainable. Like, we're just supposed to be those people. Having said that, one of the things that I'd like to point out is that I think for this to be impactful at any level, it needs to have multiple languages. It needs to be written in multiple languages, so a lot of more people can read it. I would say, like, the lesser we say, like the fewer words, the more impactful. So it could be something that's much faster and easier to read. Of course, we're still reiterating how to behave with one another, and that's another discussion. But I think that's where I come from. You know, as a designer, I really believe, like, also with COVID, I've really learned something. If it's not about people, if, you know, if my people weren't being supportive, I would not know how I would survive this entire COVID. So it's really about conversation. So maybe we need to teach people how to just talk to each other. How do you just, like, how do you say things to each other, or even visit? You know, a lot of people now, a lot of designers work, you know, I know digital tools are required for today, but I've seen this happening quite a bit, you know, with artisanal craft becoming such a it word, along with sustainability. People are just purchasing things without actually meeting craftspeople. You know, I feel like all of this is what's really causing the divide. If we end up, I mean, I know it's COVID and we can't change that very much, but when this passes, you know, if we can also commit to, you know, or commit to saying that we will physically meet each other, there will be interactions, there need to be, you know, when you put a face to one another, when you're sitting across the table from one another in an artisan's home, or if they're visiting you in your studio, like that bond, I have seen it happen for us. For us also, is so special, and it's really something that you know, surpasses any sort of contract that you write. So I think even maybe a point like that, how do you increase interaction, could be something that's really valid to think about and talk about. But I will jump in again when I'm emotional enough. Bhavya, Gina, please take over.
Who's going? Bhavya, Gina, we'll
So I actually agree with Karishma's point about the you know, like bringing it out in as many languages as we can, and you know, to make it simpler to understand. Because I think even while conducting design intervention workshops, that is one thing. Knowing the local language is something that is been, like, you know, I mean, topmost on the list, because you know, there's only so much, or you need an interpreter. And it's always easier when, you know, like, you can kind of speak, not only, like, you know, just speak the language per se, so that, you know, just the it's just like the trust and understanding that builds up. And also about the contracts, I have, you know, like, in fact, most of my workshops, it's usually, you know, I do have contracts. I have, like, you know, had them sign and everything. But what happens when you I mean, like, for example, I have done a lot of work in Dokra. And what happens is that, okay, fine, I do my workshop, come back, put it in stores and wherever. And then after that, when I go back, you know, I see in few months most of my designs are copied. But when I go back to my artisans and questions, and they're like, you know, we didn't do it, it might be some other, you know, I mean, like, you know, whatever, like group of artisans or another NGO or something like that. That same thing has happened with my leather puppetry collection and few others. Then what do you do? Because I have my contract, I have everything. I can't. I go to my artisan, and he she says that, you know, they've not done it, and they blame it on someone else. Then, as a designer, you're also stuck. The contract is almost null and void because you can't do anything about it. And so, where do we stand there? Because I mean, at least, you know, and I've tried to keep it as fair as possible, where you know, we do a collection, and the ownership lies for, you know, 6 months to a year, and then after that, open it out to them, because you know, and then they're free to market it to whoever they want. But in those months itself, when it is copied, and you know, it's just it's like a passing the past, like a blame game. Then you're stuck as a designer, because there is a lot of effort put in from your end, you know, going designing I mean, certain set of products, and then after that, coming, marketing it, putting in the stores, and then after that, you see, like, you know, copies of it done for you know, probably half the price. And then Yeah, so so that is something I want to understand. What do we do then? Because yes, I did go through your manifesto, and it is really interesting to see that. Yes, but when it comes to IP rights, I think it's still a big question mark. So how do we, sort that out? Yes, we're talking about ethical collaboration and between the artisan and the designer, not bringing in middlemen, going the right way, bringing, I mean, like having very like whether it is fair pay or fair exchange of ideas, and also a very very fair contract. But what do we do, how do we kind of get out of situations like this? So
Thank you for sharing that, Gina. Thank you. Bhavya, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I think for me, what I've really understood is that documenting anything helps you to reflect, speculate, and be more thoughtful and be more mindful. The aim of, for me, what the aim for such a manifesto becomes is to instigate that kind of speculation and behavior, that is this something that is right, or is this something that is wrong? More than anything else, more than it being a guideline, for me it's instigating speculative behavior within people who, and could be any stakeholder on any level of the industry. When we are engaging with anyone, it is about how do we want to be treated at the end of the day. And yes, we do want the document to become more inclusive and become more democratic, and that is something we really hope to do with time. But I'm really happy that we are able to have this conversation today.
Can I just add one point in here? I would just like to say that I think the more we remove the divide between this artisan and designer, there's a big divide. We know this, right? It's always about artisan designer, and it's almost like it becomes like this fight sometimes. And a lot of times when I say we, people say, "But what do you mean by we? Do you have a designing partner?" And I'm like, "No, it's the artisan. It's the person who's making it. My karigar gives me a lot of input into my design. It's not just me alone." So I feel like and I know this needs to come into the education system at some level. Somewhere we need to be talking so much more about how do you engage with people in general. And maybe this manifesto is a kind of a nudge to talk about the fact that we need to learn to engage with each other in the creative industry in general. That's what it's sounding like right now. So maybe it needs to be about saying that yes, the artisans are suffering because the designers are taking advantage. In some cases, the designers are suffering because the artisans are taking advantage. But there are so many other stakeholders who somehow are just getting lost. So I feel like we need to understand that they both have the same kind of standing in the industry. And maybe this needs to become a larger conversation, saying that this is the way we need to just be to make this industry more meaningful. Because honestly, we can bring so much change through the way we make and through the way we take forward what we have as a country. So I think maybe that's worth an idea too. Just wanted to put that out there.
I'm so happy to hear that, and that's why I'm barging in for a minute. That I'm really happy to hear this, because at IICT this is exactly what we are trying to do. Exactly. And in fact, we have so many artisans studying at IICT. They are children of artisans who will become designers. So this blurring the gap is very important. And I think because they are the people who know the skills, it's and if they come in, and so it's very good. So I
it's
think
going to be amazing. I had to say
yeah,
that it's going to be amazing if they come.
yeah. So, and they are coming. And but again, this is with experience that not everybody is good with everything. So you do need a team for putting things together. And a team is best without a written contract. But these days, it's a good idea to have a written contract. That's it. So I think this is where I come in from. But I mean, I believe in the old school that yes, as everybody said initially, including yourself, Karishma, that it should come from within. But because it's not coming from within, we have to do something about it.
So we're hoping that it starts coming from within once we start practicing it. So the next 10 years, we're not having these conversations. It's a given. Really, honestly, that's the idea.
Yeah, I think this is a great moment for Raphael to jump in and share his thoughts on what he's just been hearing us discuss.
The stage is set, I would say. Essentially, I'd speak about 3 points, and I've gone through the guidelines. I've gone through some of the quotes and the findings, and going back to what Meera said earlier, I think the basis for every contract is that to give fair and free consent, you need to have a meeting of the minds, right? And unfortunately, the divide is not only economic today between the parties to a contract. It is also in terms of value systems, and um, unfortunately, um, the two are interrelated. So the larger the economic divide, the larger the value, the gap between the value systems. Maybe think of a system where you don't pay everything upfront, and there is a royalty linked to every sale, or there is some kind of remuneration or compensation that's linked to every sale. I think the artisan then starts to feel a sense of ownership, even though they may not have it. They start to feel that sense of ownership, and then essentially they will tell anyone else who comes to poach these designs, who comes to ask them for new designs, because I've seen it as well, Gina. I've seen clients come to me and say, hey, you know what, my artisan, my karigar is giving my design to other people and say, I have created this, I've only done it, why don't you place an order with me and I can create it for you as well. But the moment you're saying, okay, you are part owner of this, I'm giving you a royalty, they will never have that conversation anymore. They will say, no, this is something I'm doing for this madam, and I will not give it to you. And that's really a new economic model where you will see that respect for the zamindar, who is not, I'm not calling you zamindars, but respect for the for all the collaborators in the ecosystem. And yeah, I will end my
Can I
bhashan.
ask a question, please? Sorry.
Yes, please. There are a few questions. I have a question also. Let's go. Taliga ma'am, please ask your question.
Thank you. So, Raphael, since you were talking about these legal kind of things, so first thing I'd like to bring something to your notice and then ask a question, because this has been in my mind for a while. And the thing is that usually whenever we talk about artisans, we assume that they are all very poor, for some reason, because that was the case 20-25 years ago. And a lot of things have changed, and there are artisans around me in Jaipur who are as good as businessmen. They are still artisans. They are still called artisans. And they work with block prints or, XYZ. Now they employ 20, 30, 40 people. Now these people, they come from Bihar. I'm just talking about my observation, and that's the question. So are they also artisans or are they labor? Now, whom are we interacting with? Now, if an artisan is of that caliber, he himself calls an artisan because he was initially an artisan, now has gone up the ladder in the in terms of economy, and that is what the NGOs wanted 25 years ago, and that is what everybody wants, and this is how things have improved, and people have gone up the chain. Now there are few languishing crafts which have languished, and some are languishing. So some have languished, some are languishing. There you will find an artisan in a small house doing something on his own, but more or less the ones who've got awards or the ones who have formed their own groups are doing pretty well, is my observation, because I have been to their places and seen, because I don't work with any one of them per se, but we invite them to teach. We go and see what they are doing. Our students go and interact. So one can make out which economic standing they belong to. So the first thing, that assumption that all of them are poor is not really, I don't subscribe to that, looking at my observations. Then the other thing is that now, because artisan, when we would say traditional artisan, it is a family job. But now it is not a family job anymore. It is a business. They are also inviting labor from all across the country and finding cheap labor and working. So will that labor be called artisan? Because my concern now lies with that labor. Is that labor being fairly treated? Because the other person now has reached a good level. So is that labor being fairly treated? Yes or no? So how can we also work around? I mean, this is something that troubles me. So I'm asking you. I have no answer to it right now. So That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you so much for making that point. I would just like to ask Meera, whose hand was up, to you also had something to say, because I know you have to leave in about 10-15 minutes. So if we could just get your response, and then we'll let you go carry on.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think, Rafael, thank you. You made some very good points, and you really actually brought me to the point I was wanting to make. And that is that, first of all, just to quote my friend Rajesh Kulkarni of Akar Pot, who always talks of being copy left and not copyright. And he says that his designs are there for everyone to work with, So why can't we look at another model where copyrights or IP is seen as joint ownership between the designer and the artisan? So then this whole question of my design was copied doesn't come in at all. It's like our design is even when you're branding it or when you're putting it out in the market, it's a joint ownership between the designer and the artisan. So you're not just giving credit, like you said, which is more like a token kind of name, a lip service, but you're really walking the talk there, yeah.
I was just, in fact, I had put my hand up as well because I had a similar thought, which was, say, Raphael, if people are co-creating and one person is saying, okay, I have a right to control where it's sold and how it's sold and who it's sold to, in a sense. In this case, the designer is co-creating with an artisan, but the designer is saying, I have the right to figure out who this is being sold to, how much it's being sold for, where it's being sold. Now, when you have something that's mutually owned, it's not just about me getting a royalty from where you want to sell it, but what about my right to sell it to whoever I want to sell it to? That's actually, and if you want to take that right away, then shouldn't there be an additional sort of like an exclusivity that where they're talking about people have to pay for exclusivity? The customers will end up obviously having to pay for that exclusivity. But if everyone is paying for it, then there's then there's an economic reason for me not to go and copy it or sell it to somebody else, because me as an artisan, I live under different circumstances. I've got different needs, right? So, I mean, if, tomorrow a buyer comes up to my door and I'm like, listen, I know you want to sell this for 5,000 rupees to people in, big cities, but I want to sell it for 500 rupees to everybody who comes my way. So I mean, if you're co-creating, then that's also like a part of that ownership, right? Karishma, what do you feel about the feasibility, within the fashion and textile and fashion-related handicrafts, embroidery, whatever other techniques? What do you feel about the feasibility of the co-creation, co-ownership when it comes?
I think it's something that is very doable. It's quite possible. It's something that we've been exploring for quite some time. It hasn't happened. That's a different story. But it is something that we as a brand are very open to. So we also understand that sometimes, there are different, like, I know I end up going on to this very like social, very like idealistic point of view, but that's really honestly, that's the way we function. And I'm talking from that point of view. There are a lot of artisans you will meet who really are very eager to co-create. And those are the ones you sit down across the table and be like, come on, let's do something. These may be artisans who probably have had a bit of like, they're not struggling to make ends meet. They're the ones who are slightly more successful, or the younger dynamic ones coming up from all these great colleges that are teaching artisans how to design, right? They are really talking about these things. Then you have the other ones who say, ma'am, I want my money. You pay me for my services, whatever I'm giving you, I'm done, I'm out of the picture. So I really feel like, Gina, just to answer what you were saying, is that it's very hard to have a very clear cut this is black and white sort of a system to work in a system that the art sector is. I think what we need to really do is understand who the artisan is who we're dealing with, and then work out a system that works with them. So for me as a brand, I would probably have 3 systems of working. One which could be a co-creative system, one which could be where I say, you're making the product, I'm paying you for the product, deal done. And then I have another one which works on royalty. So it really depends on, that's what I think, on who the artisan is, what the end result is, what the end product is. Now, having said that, I put up my, or at least we talk about the processes very, very openly, right? We say, this is macrame, this is how we do it. We'll put up a video doing the macrame, put up a video how we make the cord. So honestly speaking, all the information's out there anyways. And most of the times, for me, I've had one experience with an artisan who really took something, but honestly speaking, after a point, I don't think he knew any better. I don't think he was really doing it to really harm me or do something wrong to me. I think it just happened. And we've also started practicing the same thing Gina spoke about. So after 1 year, do whatever you want to do with it. Once I've launched my collection, once I've sold it for a particular amount of time, because we work 1 year in advance, you can actually do what you want with it, because honestly, it's with you. I can't stop you from doing that anyways. But having said that, I feel like it's very important to understand who you're working with, and because the information is out there. I really think our biggest threat now are the stores who are out there, who just think that they can start their own lines, and they'll end up taking designer clothes, copying it, going to other artisans, imitating it. People get swatches or they get photos, and other artisans make it all the time. So you don't have to go to your own artisan. So at the end of the day, how do you protect yourself from how do you protect your designs? I know you spoke about copyright, but really it's not that simple. Someone changes a button on my product, it's not the same product anymore. And we have that issue all the time. So there are so many layers in the entire design, like the makers industry, that I feel like a lot of different points need to be addressed, and it'll never just be black and white. Yeah.
No, definitely. I mean, it's an interesting one to figure out. Got it.
I'd just like to add in one point over here. So what we do is in our mainline collection too at Kasha, every time we make a product, inside the product, you have the artisan's name, the tailor, embroiderer, dyer, whoever's made it. The name is on the product. So we actually have customers messaging us saying, please thank Afsan. Yeah. Please thank Afsan. He's made a great garment for me. So even that's, and they write it themselves. Earlier we used to make them sign it. So we keep doing these kind of things. And really, honestly, sometimes even that small little thing makes them feel like mera naam ja raha hai is par. Matlab, it's my responsibility. So I completely agree with you, Bhavya. I think it's about how much do you engage people and at what level? Because really it goes beyond this. No, I mean, you have to also have conversations now because of lockdown. We've had to restructure timing. People have been willing to come in and work at 7:30 a.m. in the morning just because we had to do it. It's because we sat down, had an honest conversation. Tell me what is possible to get us out of the situation together. It's always about how to get out of the situation together. It's not about me being the owner and you being someone who works for me. This is ours. And really, I mean, I know that, but it's just something that I think we enjoy practicing.
No, and I think
I completely agree to that point of it, because I think being completely vulnerable and just honest with my artisans, especially last year when we were all struggling with the same issues, and it came to a point when I said, okay, fine, I really don't know what to do. We really need to, survive and whatever. So then, I mean, we just come up with a solution together, and it's never about, and also about putting out their stories. Yes, like Karishma, they are very proud, when there is a little article somewhere, and when there is a mention about them, or about what they've created, and there is a quote or a video of my artisan, and like our work. So they're very proud about it, that and they do take that ownership, and they celebrate it. And I'm not saying but yeah, few of them, of course, there'll always be issues here and there, but I think mostly and also I agree with what Tulika ma'am had said, that it's not about them not having the money or being poor, because most of them are pretty well off, and they are in fact supporting about 10-15 more artisans, and giving them work regularly. So it's and also that hunger to create something new, to innovate, that is I think that is very prevalent now, especially with the younger generation of artisans in their early 20s and 30s. So they're, and I think it's if and that happens only when you co-create, and you don't treat them, never ever treat them as a laborer or anything else. It's always like it's I mean coming together and doing something together and putting it out, and getting the benefits of it together. So yeah,
I just we're running out of time for today, and I just wanted to say thank you guys for so naturally bringing this back to the core ethos of Fashion Revolution, which is basically who made my clothes and transparency, and not this is making this about community and not anonymity. So thank you so much for naturally embodying that and bringing that out. I'd like to thank Dr. Taliga Gupta for being with us today. And I know you have to leave, so thank you so much. And please feel free to log off at any point in time. We're really, really grateful that you were there to shepherd us. And we really look forward to being able to have these discussions. We're going to update whatever was created following this discussion. I think there's some really interesting points that have been made about co-creation and giving credit and vulnerability, as well as trust, as well as relevance. And I think all of these things, we will be boiling this document down, and we'd love to keep getting further inputs from you and the faculty. Thank you so much.
Alia. Thank you so much.
Of course, Raphael, thank you so much for jumping in with, that perspective that, we don't have enough on. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you so much. Bye.